Hey there, New Day Blessings. I'm Denise Ann Sumbry, and welcome to another episode of the Maven Podcast. My next guest is founder and licensed professional, clinical counselor supervisor, clinical hypnotherapist, and psychedelic assisted therapist of Washington Wellness Institute. He is an assistant trainer for the Internal Family Systems Institute, a rock star of Black Therapist Rock, a former collegiate level adjunct faculty, and a counseling mentor. He has a PhD in health psychology, focusing on moral distress and recovering from secondary traumas such as burnout, compassion fatigue, and job life satisfaction. He is a published author, a healer for Grammy Award-winning artists and celebrities, founder of his nonprofit View Unity, which focuses on inclusive and healthy spaces for content creators. He is an accomplished musician and was a member of the internationally acclaimed collective Mourning a Black Star while locally leading the Land Brass Band based in Cleveland, Ohio. He has performed and created music in notable areas such as Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, the Kennedy Center, and Christoph Winkler Company in Germany. He personally states, and I quote, "Finding the blend of being, mind, and music, I have found that healing is my art." I am delighted to welcome the one and the only Dr. William C. Washington. Welcome
That was
to the
exciting. That was extremely exciting. I thought I had to like jump up, but like I was like bam bam bam. Like that was amazing.
welcome.
It's so good to see you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for being here and saying yes.
Yes, it was easy to say yes when you know somebody was so worth it. So thank you for being so worthy, amazing, and attentive and detail oriented. It's amazing to be with you.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. And I knew we recently met through a mutual friend, our sister, Lavonda Rump. Yes, we love you, girl. Shout out to her. And I met you in an environment that was just so full of fun, movement, laughter.
Mhm.
And without even us being introduced, like I made a mental note, like I want to know who that is because your
Right.
energy was just um so bright and confident and authentic and just very much comfortable in your own skin. And I was like, raised eyebrow. I need to know
Yeah.
who that is. And then when we were introduced and then further learned who you are, I was like, bingo. I'm like, divine
Wow.
alignment.
That's so awesome. That's so good.
And I knew that I wanted you here on the podcast to share your wisdom and medicine with the world here.
That's amazing because I was there just trying to be Kinergy. I was just wearing a really beautiful sweater and I just wanted to love what I experienced.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that.
Yes. And I mean that's a great point. Can you describe your style?
Yeah. I say that confidence is my cologne.
I love that.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what I wear, it's did I come as myself today? And I really do see the world as you are what the world is, and the world is what you are. And so we have to be so sensitive about how we decide who we want to be before we walk outside that door.
Yeah.
So I make sure I do all the stuff I need. I make sure I have my day before I have anybody else's day, before I walk outside. So I'm very committed to that.
And what does your morning ritual look like?
Oh my gosh, that's great. So the moment I feel conscious thought, I wake up. Doesn't matter when it is. It could be 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 7 a.m. It doesn't matter. So the moment I find conscious thought, I say the word hallelujah because I was like, I made it. What's with us? So I made it so far.
Another day.
I was like, first step, I'm alive. So first step is make sure you're alive. That's the first step. Then I do my ritual. So I listen to certain songs polyrhythms, African Zen music. I listen to different artists that resemble not only my ancestral lineage, but also my historical background. And then I prepare my lights. I make sure I honor those that had passed in my family. I make sure I do my prayer, my meditation, and then I do my warm ups. So I make sure I massage my face. I do all my, you know, and then I make sure my body's okay. And then I make sure I play music. So I'll play one of my instruments as a frequency out into the world to heal those that I'm thinking of. I make a list of people I care about, and I play music for them. And then I decide what I'm going to try to wear because my style is not a present. My style is very eclectic, as people say. I wear what I feel, so it doesn't really match all the time. And then I decide to bathe. In my bathe, I think about all the pain, hurt, things that are holding me back. I let that wash through me, and I cleanse myself, and then make breakfast, or I go get a smoothie at Pop Life. And then I think about all the people that I want to be healing for the day. I think about each single person and what they may need today here. And then I just live.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I just love the art of self-prioritization in the morning for you, pouring into self first, even though there is that honor and gratitude to spirit and your ancestors, right? That because the spiritual connection and divine protection, right? Like we have to give honor, and to do that first thing in the morning um, is a very, very beautiful practice. And you're tending to yourself, you're pouring into yourself first and foremost
Right.
because you pour a lot into others, being a healer, running your own wellness institute. Um, and then just even navigating, and I can resonate with that too, just navigating out in the world. Just as soon as you step outside your home, right, you are in position.
I am in position to be received and
Yeah.
taken from and everything. And I think that a lot of times we don't prepare ourselves for that. We don't fortify ourselves for that. And then we assume that everybody should consider what I've been through.
Yes.
No one's took that time to sit with me and do that. I don't get asked those questions. So that's why it's so special to be with you, is because people don't really ask me how I'm doing. So I had to make sure I know how I'm doing first.
Yes. I love that. I love that. And speaking, how is your heart today?
I feel like my shirt. I feel like I feel so many colors. I'm swirling with emotions and just bursts. But then there's still patterns that I can identify, but there's colors behind it. And I'm just feeling really internally explosive and excited right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful how you intentionally weave in color therapy, right? Because colors bring and emit their own vibration
Yes.
that is soothing, that is uplifting, that is opening, that is, there's no coincidence when one wakes up and they're like, you know what, I'm going to wear this color. I'm going to wear this particular garment, you know. So I love how you said you wear what you feel.
Yeah. And I wanted to make sure the foundation was blue because I wanted to speak my truth to you.
Yes.
So
Yes. What inspired you to pursue a career in mental health, and how did that evolve into you founding your own wellness institute?
yeah, a lot of failure. So I was growing up because I wanted to be a dentist, actually.
Really?
So my goal, I was actually in school to be a dentist. Dentist by day, musician by night. That was the dream. I was like, me and my big brother are gonna have a practice together because he's an internal medicine pediatric doctor. And so it was like, we're gonna have a business together. It's gonna be this. That was the dream. And then once you don't get accepted, it's like, oh my God, what happens? Who am I? My whole life was based upon this thing. And then to my failure, though, I actually became a janitor at Cleveland State. I was a janitor for a while. That was actually a really peaceful job. I was just like listening to music and just working, and it was beautiful. And I actually got employee of the month the first month. But then I got like,
Of course you did.
they're like, you're like the people, the employees loved me there and all that. But then it was funny because literally that same day I found out that I was gonna go on tour with the Temptations. I got asked, they're like, will you like, hey, we want you to go to Tennessee. And I was like, okay. So I literally took a suitcase, a trombone, a 97 Dodge Intrepid, and literally just, but it didn't have brakes on it. They had like Flintstone brakes. And like, I was like, I'm just going to go. And from that moment, I entered a whole nother life. I just went on a faith, and it changed my entire life.
Wow.
And through being a musician touring like that, I ended up finding my friends like, you should be a therapist. I'm like, that's not, I'm going to be a dentist. And I was like, let me just see what it's like. And it was the first time in my life when I looked at what it means and what it does and learning about psychology, it came natural to me, just like music. Like I didn't have to work hard at music. I had to put myself into music, and I had to trust that trust fall into your passion. And to me, psychology is no different than music. It's the same thing to me. So I just really, through my failures, I found that failure and faith actually brought me together.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there a pivotal moment with your tour that was that shift where you're like, oh, was it that moment when someone said I think you should be a therapist, or what like led up to that pivotal moment?
Yeah, it was the fact that they kept going and I wasn't afraid to leave. I was like, if I keep going, great. If not, and the thing is that all my life I've lived in joy and passion. I always lived on my passions. I am my joy. And so I never thought about, well, not until just this moment in my life, what happiness really means to me. But I've realized that my passion has always guided me and has always protected me. So when this happened, I felt a passion come up when he asked me that. And I was okay with leaving because I knew that if I really love music and if I am really that good, I'll get another situation. Like I'm not worried about the looks of things anymore, because I've always done what I was passionate about. So
That is beautiful. And I want to touch on two things here: failure and then passion. With passion, what advice do you give those who struggle with finding what they're passionate about?
mm, there's three answers to that, but I'll give one. You have to be okay with who you are and what you've been through. I trauma bonded with my music. Didn't know that. And like, well, like I'm like, right.
Yeah. So I feel that. We can just take a moment there.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. I want to feel this. I didn't know music was saving me. And now that I'm in a better space in my life, I can give back to what music did for me.
Yes.
And so when I got back to that, and I got back to that place, I recognized that it wasn't really about the music. It was about music was teaching me about my voice. You have a voice, use it, find it, learn. You can learn. I learned 9 instruments, just different ways of speaking to myself, speaking from myself. And so I think that if you really want to embrace your passion, you have to be okay with who you are and who you've been. And a lot of times people find themselves in some of the darkest places, right? Heroes are forged through darkness, right? And so I really believe that when you take that time out to really ask yourself, what do I want to be known for? That's purpose. And usually in your passion, you find your purpose. And so I have found it and I have embraced it and it has covered me in a beauty of love. And it wasn't always roses and sunshine. During college, I was sitting in the basement practicing hours and hours. I didn't go to parties. I didn't get turned up in college. I was literally in the corner of the basement practicing, hoping that this would mean something someday.
Wow.
So I stand here as a proud, passionate, purposeful person. Triumph and disaster, those are the same thing. It's all perspective. So
That's beautiful.
I hope that answered.
That beautifully.
Okay.
Beautifully. And I know for myself, what I hear a lot, and I think that is a language, there's always this fear of failure. People are fearful of failure. My question to you is that even really true? Like,
Failure is not real.
do people really, because I don't feel like I connect that to anymore. I don't connect to that statement. Oh, I'm afraid to fail.
Yeah. Let's do an example. So even your listeners, as they're watching this, like let's sit, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and I'm going to ask you this question. When you think of your failure, who's around you? Who's looking at you? Who are you disappointed by? Who's disappointing you? Take inventory of the faces and the moments. And do those people matter more than you? That's the true essence. Our fear and our failure are not the same. We're afraid of what people may say, may think, may do, may treat us, the change of access, the change of privilege, the change of gratitude. A lot of us are so stuck in this mindset of being so grateful. You gotta be grateful, 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 grateful. But those when you're trying to actually deserve something, you feel unworthy because you've worked on being grateful for so much. And it's like, no, you are entitled to get what you deserve. You are entitled to say what you want. You are entitled to say, I don't like this. This is inequality for me. You are allowed to say that. But living in a state of trauma and pain and no reassurance, gratitude and being grateful seems like it's the only answer. And we don't ever give ourselves that grace to feel that. And so I think a lot of times that fear and failure really does not, it's not accurate. It's not really about you. It's always about everybody else. So externalized. So yeah, it's not real. Failure is not real.
That's potent. That's potent. And I'll even further say, when someone finds themselves even considering that thought or leaning into that, and this is my personal opinion, that it's a self-imposed restriction and even can carry a level of excuse. And I feel that it, like leaning into that, dims your own light, your own power, your own confidence.
Yes. I call that legacy burden.
Say more. Legacy burden. Say more about that.
Yeah. So Duran Young does a great talk about that. But legacy burdens are beliefs that have been imposed on you, or values or statements or rules that have been ingrained in your life that actually don't come from you. So a lot of times you'll have parents or people that, because they never resolve their own burdens, they pass their burdens on to you. So a lot of limiting beliefs are typically because of what people you've been around have lived through. So, if your parents think, well, I'm not dealing with things because, woe is me. Usually you come up with a woe is me because they never actually resolve that. So just how we have generational traumas or curses, you also have the same psychological beliefs that are passed down. So those are legacy burdens. But when you remove those, you do get legacy gifts. So there are heirlooms with that once you get through that. But yeah.
I love that. Legacy gifts. Can you say more about that? Just expand on legacy gifts.
Yeah. So when you get through the legacy burden, you realize that even though that was a burden in your life, there were lessons in those burdens that are actually why you are so productive and successful today. So for instance, for me, I had a very much, I grew up in a whole, make sure everybody's good, make sure everybody's happy, make sure everybody's, so I had a lot of worry about, Is everybody okay? Is everybody okay? But then I was so attentive to everybody else. But through that, it allowed me to be a very attentive lover. So now I'm a very great lover because I know how to look at, in, and with people. So now I can focus on what that means. I can cultivate that not out of fear anymore, but out of abundance. So a lot of times those burdens have a lot of scarcity behind them. And those gifts come with a lot of abundance once you get through that.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah. Yeah, right? That's good.
I love
Yeah.
that. And so also what I picked up in that environment plays a lot
Mm.
in one's upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
their thought processes,
Yes.
behaviors, patterns. And even with my own personal experience with therapy, and the question I want to ask you is, what is the true purpose of therapy?
Hmm.
But I'll just, before I ask you that, right? Like, and I'm very intentional with that question,
Yeah.
even how I'm posing it.
Yeah,
The
'cause that's loaded.
purpose of
That's loaded.
therapy. But I know in my personal journey with therapy, a lot of what has come up is related to the environment that my past and even present environments that have molded me into who I am today as a portion of that, right? And so my intention is to, in therapy, like find my true authentic self in addition to what my environment has reflected back to me, right? But what I want to ask you, the professional, what is the true purpose of therapy?
Therapy happens in the session, but healing happens in the application. That is the foundation.
Can you, I just need you to repeat that.
Yes.
Repeat.
So therapy happens in the session, healing happens in the application. We have to understand that purpose is a human compass. That is my belief in my model I created. And so it's very important to understand that it doesn't matter where you go because you have to know what your purpose is. And so when it comes to environmental health, because I see health in 8 different ways as a therapist. And so sometimes environmental health it's not about who you are, it's about where you are. Sometimes you have really amazing people in bad areas, and all they needed was a different shift of environment to be thriving, which is why it's so important to gain access and to open up doors for people as you move forward in life. And so I think that the therapy, we always want to, when I see somebody, I want them to see who they've always wanted to be. I'm really modeling what it might be like to be yourself. And that's why I love the music process so much, because all my life I wanted to play like Miles, J.J. Johnson, Freddie. I wanted to play like them. I was trying so hard, just memorizing, but I ended up just sounding more like myself at some point. And then I started loving my sound. So think about the healing process. You try so hard to be these things for so long that you actually just end up being yourself. You always come back home. And I just want people to come back home.
Yes. That's beautiful. What, from your therapist's lens, what are some of the common misconceptions about therapy or even mental health, especially in the Black community, and how do you work to dispel those?
Yeah, God. I'll say like 4 things. I got like 20 things in my
I'm sure.
1, I'm not Jesus. I'm not gonna wash away your sins. Please don't give me that. Please don't give me that job. Time. I don't want it. And my student loan is too damn high. Thank you. 2, just because with self-awareness comes emotional responsibility. So the more aware you become in my sessions, the more emotionally responsible you have to be outside of my sessions. Right?
I understand that.
3, It's okay to grieve something that has already happened again. Sometimes we didn't cry right the first time. Sometimes we didn't get mad right the first time.
Because that's one of the things people are like, oh, I hate having to tell my story over again. It's just talk therapy, but I love that.
People hold so many words in their body, and you create these emotional malignancies that become emotional cancers. You have to release your words. You have to, I don't care if you can paint and color and sip wine. No, you have to release your words. Your words are bounded here and here. It stays in you. And so I tell people, the more you tell your story, the less you become of it. And what do people do when they abuse you? They make you quiet. They make you stay away from your truth. They gaslight you. They don't let you tell your story the full way. But also, are you ready to tell your full story? Because you weren't perfect, right?
Right.
So the more you tell your story, the less you become of it. So I think it's important to tell your story over and over again. Because what story are you telling yourself, and what story did you go through? There's two sides to that. And also the last thing I would say for Black communities especially is that we have to stop desensitizing our history. You cannot talk about ancestral and gifts and all these things, but then be like, I don't want to watch another slave movie. No. Why don't you want to watch what you've been through? Oh, because that's negative. That's different. Okay, so then why don't you change something? You're in the same situation. It's just not as prevalent. It's just not as aware up front, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to stop. We have desensitized our ability to understand our history because of academics, educational denial, right? DEI. Let's talk about that. So we have to be more understanding that we have to be resensitize ourselves. Like think about Juneteenth, right?
Yes.
We celebrate that kind of, right? We're getting more popular. But what was it really a story about? It was about migration. So many family members were separated, torn apart, actively, all up to that point. And it was all about actually finding family members and finding your sons, your daughters, your husbands, your friends. It was all about finding each other again. That's a memory of knowing that we were not together. That's why there's a collective Black consciousness sometimes. We have phrases and mannerisms in the African American vernacular English, right? Bonics, right? Where it's like we literally we say all the same things. Why? Because we used to be all together. So like just the simplicity of just like homage and honoring what really happened. We have denied ourselves of that in so many ways. And sad.
You mentioned, because I've been there. I've said that. I'm like, I don't want to watch another slave movie. I just don't. Like I've literally said that, and I didn't realize that that was a form of desensitizing history. Are there any other cues that one can become aware of how they're desensitizing their history? Is there anything else?
It's funny. So it's the way that they see, like, as much as people like recently, a lot of Black folks have been like, oh, I'm not in religion. I'm not really into religion. I can't do that. And it's like, oh, I don't like churches. And it's really hard because like you can say some of your favorite R&B songs that you love in the 90s and the 2000s are because those cats were in the church singing. That's why they sound like that. You're like, oh, R&B not the same anymore, because they're not in church anymore. You can't imitate gospel music.
No.
You either in there or you're not. There's no mid, right? And you can hear the difference in sound.
Absolutely.
Even understanding the evolution of Black music, right? Like, so just walk with me real quick. So like hip hop is the culture. Rap was the rebellion. Trap is the trauma. We're evolving. We are evolving. We are actively evolving, and we don't even take conscious of. We don't have to do that because Black minds have always been evolving. But we've always been evolving through our hardships, our oppression, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, during this whole election and everything coming up, I'm like excited because the two things you watch are artists, and you also watch who's creating what, right? Artists are always going to create, but who are we focused on? And we don't recognize that there's a difference between those two alone, right? And so, like, I'm curious about the next genre of music's going to be.
For sure.
Right?
For
like,
sure.
Like, what are we going to say now? That's why people are like, I'm in the trap, I'm not in the trap, or I'm not. We desensitize ourselves by just allowing the flow of our evolution to be real. We deny ourselves of the flow of our own evolution. So we gotta reset. We gotta reset.
Do you notice resetting happening? And if so, how? Or where does one even begin to reset, especially before it gets too far out of reach?
Yeah, the thing is that we're at the ceiling right now. It's a glass ceiling. And it's about to happen next year. Next year's about to happen.
Yes.
And it's gonna make us turn back into our communities.
I feel that.
We've been externalizing and objectifying our own success for so long.
I feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. So next year is gonna be like, we're gonna be busting the ceiling.
Ooh. Potent. Okay, I can go so many different ways right now.
Dude, look, I got your back. I'm behind you. Go ahead, Lee. Lead it up.
So I want to transition a bit here. And I recently had a couple conversations with some of my Black male friends.
Love Black men.
Love Black men. Bless it. We love you, Black men.
Black men. We love you.
We love you. And in preparation for this conversation, I didn't want to make any assumptions. So I posed the question like, hey, are you in therapy?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, why? And doing the pulse check of like, what has been your experience? Because some have been in therapy. And what was consistent with every Black man that I chatted with was, and I guess this falls under the same lines of, I'm not going to say misconceptions because this is part of what they felt at leading up to even deciding to go to therapy or getting in therapy.
Yeah.
But it was trust. There's a trust factor, especially not even just a trust factor with talking with someone new, right? But like there's trust in even relationships.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's an element of betrayal that came up. Vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And opening up. And I think those kind of maybe tied together too, but also the vulnerability being viewed as a weakness. And I think men in general, but especially Black men, you know, you're not encouraged to emote or emotionally express. And one gentleman even mentioned, as it relates to the trust and the vulnerability, that the words, the fear of what is being expressed, then being weaponized against him. What is your message to Black men in that regard? Hey there, we hate to leave you hanging, but thank you for joining us for part 1 of this conversation. I hope it resonated with you and gave you plenty to think about. Make sure to subscribe and follow the Maven podcast so you don't miss part 2 next week, where you'll hear Dr. Will's message to Black men in therapy, and we'll also take a deeper dive into his 5 principles of reset. It's a conversation you won't want to miss. See you next time.